And so now it is my pleasure to introduce to you Lori Cumbo, Commissioner of the Department of Cultural Affairs.
Good afternoon, New York City. I feel inspired, and I want to give a special welcome and shout out to all the children that are here today. Can all the children that are here today? Because this is for you, essentially. This is an opportunity for you to be able to celebrate, but also to recognize and carry forth our history moving forward. I also want to recognize, as I'm here today, when we think about New York City and where we are, and Wall Street, and all of the buildings that are built here, we know that it is our blood, sweat, and tears that built New York City, that built Wall Street, that built the courthouses where we still do not find justice, that built all of this right here in New York City. We know that here and not far from here, as we celebrate and raise a flag, we know that we, African people, were brought here and sold on auction blocks. Our ancestors were sold on auction blocks. And here we stand today, proud, resilient, with our head held high, moving forward. And when we raise this flag today, let's also have a funeral for words like minority, because there's nothing minor about us. We are extraordinary people who have persevered and made America what it is today. When we think about it, the man that's going to come here shortly, our Mayor Eric Adams, right? He has made history from where our people have come from auction blocks to here to be in Gracie Mansion and City Hall, to bring us all along for this incredible journey of liberation. Because Juneteenth recognizes our freedom, but this holiday recognizes that we have to continue to fight for freedom every single day. When we think of the prison industrial complex system, when we think of so many of our men and women languishing in shelter, when we think of so many who have not recovered from the transatlantic slave trade and all of the isms, who walk our streets up and down, we know that we want to enjoy life and we want to celebrate life. But we also, as African people, have a duty to continue to bring our brothers and sisters forward. So today, as we raise this flag, let's continue to remember those, our ancestors, those that we continue to raise up, but also our parents, our grandparents, our great-great-grandparents, people who had to clean houses, people who had to wash floors, people who had to humble themselves and bury their dreams so that we would be able to live out our dreams. So we have a responsibility to live up to the work that they do every day. And in that, I just want to lift up some of the accomplishments that we as African people have achieved. When we think of Kamala Harris in the White House, we know we have come so far. When we think of Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader in Congress, first to hold and serve that position. When we think of Yvette Clarke, Congresswoman, only black woman from New York State representing us in the halls of Congress. When we think of our Attorney General, Letitia James. When we think of Carl Hastie and Andrea Stewart Cousins in the halls of Albany creating justice. When we think of Adrienne Adams, first African-American woman speaker in New York City. When we think of Vanessa Gibson and Donovan Richards, we think of them as our borough presidents holding these positions that no one ever held before. When we think of individuals like Darcel Clark, when we think of people like Antonio Reynoso and Alvin Braggs and Joe Gonzalez and Eric Gonzalez, and we think of Jamani Williams, first public advocate, African-American man, we are doing it. From Tiger Woods in golf to Serena Williams in Wimbledon to Beyonce, the most winningest Grammy winner woman of all time, to LeBron James, highest scoring athlete in NBA. We are extraordinary people. So continue to lift us up. Continue to lift our brothers and sisters up. Continue to lift our mayor up, because when he rises, we all rise. And continue to love on our children. Continue to educate them. Continue to teach them the true history of who we are and where we came from and where they need to go, because they are going to take us to heights beyond what we could ever dream. We are truly our ancestors' wildest dream. Thank you all so much.
Of the Bowling Green Association, and it's a proud moment for us that finally now we're beginning to recognize Juneteenth here at Bowling Green. And I can promise you, every single year from now on, 100 years from now, when we're all gone, Africans will come here and remember this day, the first time the Juneteenth flag was raised here. The history, the first 200 years of the African history in New York City all took place down here, south of what is City Hall. And obviously a lot of it was terrible. The first Africans ever to arrive here in what would become New York City, what then was New Amsterdam, was 9 enslaved Africans brought here by the Dutch. And that was beginning of that terrible period in New York City and American history. There have been a lot of abuses taking place. The most horrible example of all that should always be remembered, 1741, a group of enslaved New York Africans were accused by the white community of fomenting an insurrection to take over the city. It's untrue if that was reality or not. But as a result, right where Federal Hall is now, which was then City Hall, there were hundreds of Africans were put in a dungeon in the basement. And at least 18 of them, as a result of this supposed insurrection, were burned at the stake, and another 17 were hanged. It was one of the most terrible days in New York City history. But now, let's concentrate on the future. I put out a statement on behalf of the Bowling Green Association on Monday, Juneteenth. One, that we should finally name an important street in Lower Manhattan in honor of the African American community. And one of the most important is Broad Street, from Wall Street to Water Street. And I have suggested, and I hope will happen, that that will be co-named African American Way in honor of the African community in New York. But far more importantly, there is no official African American museum in New York City. I have proposed, and I sent a letter on Monday to the Secretary of the Smithsonian City, bring a branch of the National African American Museum of History and Culture to here in New York City and put it right on Wall Street. There's a great location at 23 Wall Street, right across the street from Federal Hall, right across the street from the New York Stock Exchange. There is no better place. It will attract the largest crowd. The African American community deserves it, and let's make it happen in time for 2026, which is the 250th anniversary of white American independence. So let's work together and make that happen. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our Master of Ceremonies, Deputy Commissioner David Lewis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arthur. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Lewis, Deputy Commissioner of Community Partnerships and Engagement at the Mayor's Community Affairs Unit. It is my pleasure to serve today as the MC for this amazing flag raising as we celebrate Juneteenth. This afternoon, we are happy to be surrounded by community members who are entrenched within their community, giving back and preserving the history of those who were brought to this country against their will and helped build this nation. Today, we honor the legacy of the great Black men and women whose shoulders we stand on, for without them, we would not be here. We honor the lives lost through slave trade and through slavery, and this is why we are here to celebrate Juneteenth and raise the flag to honor the emancipation and liberation and freedom of Black slaves in this country. It's important for us to understand why we are here, how we are here, who we are, and where we are right now, this moment. And this is why Juneteenth exists. This is our history, this is part of American history, and this is Black history. And let's be clear that Black history is American history. So without further ado, I'd like to begin this event, and we'd like to introduce Deborah Oguama, the New York State Director of the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation, who will begin with some remarks. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's with my great, great honor that a dream or a spirit-filled has taken place here today. I know deep in my heart that when Doc Myers had told me a couple of years ago that he wanted us New Yorkers to raise this Juneteenth flag here in Wall Street, it was a really great, great task, and I didn't know how or when it will happen. But I began to build coalitions with other people that had celebrated Juneteenth here in New York City and also with the national organization. And they heard my cries. And that is why we're all here together. We all know the legacy of slavery here, and we hope and pray each and every year that we will have a full program touching and embarking on our history, on how Blacks have built Wall Street and built America. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Deborah. And so now we are going to welcome Baba Neil Clark to conduct the libation.
My name is Chief Baba Neil Clark. I say that very proudly because I have a chieftaincy title in Oshogbo, Nigeria. I was born in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. I'm very proud that I have been able to take the due diligence to understand who I am as a person of African descent and make those connections, despite the intentions for myself and people like me to forget. I greet you in that manner because that is the Yoruba language, and it is a language that the ancestors of people of African descent were denied the ability to speak. So as we go forward in recognizing the rights, the privileges, and the presence of people of African heritage, it's also necessary to reverse those denials and those dismissals and those negations that they were subjected to when they were enslaved and brought to this country. I ask you briefly to call out the names of the ancestors in your family and your family lineage. Let's hear them. Let's bring the saints in. Iba, 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 Frederick Douglass. Iba, 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 Bobo, Egung, Bobo, and Nia. On this auspicious occasion, we pay homage to all of the ancestors, named and unnamed, who have stood before us so that we can be here today, because if they had not survived, we would not be here to do what we're doing today. The only reason that we see as far as we do is because we stand on the shoulders of those who have gone before us. To, Ibanish.
Cheryl D.B. Murphy, Juneteenth, NJOF member. She'll be speaking on the mission of the NJOF and the importance of the Juneteenth flag.
Juneteenth is to bring all Americans together to celebrate our common bond of freedom. Through the recognition, observation, education, historic preservation of the Juneteenth in America. Flag-raising ceremonies in honor of our African American Black veterans, Buffalo soldiers, Negro soldiers, was the first man, Cyrus Attack was the first Black man casualty of the Boston Massacre in America resolution, Christmas acts. The Civil War 186,000 colored troops fought and died for freedom. The WWI Harlem Hellfighter served their country. Cavett Williams was the first African-American woman in the Army service. African-American Army engineers and strength segregation and the Maffort Point Marines were the first African Americans to enter the U.S. Marine Corps from 1942 to 1949. Also, this includes our awesome Buffalo Soldiers and the Tuskegee Airmen. Thank you for your time. This is the meaning of Juneteenth.
Thank you, Ms. Cheryl. And now we're going to have Nubia Christos from Creating Unity in the Community to speak on the history of Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth. My name is Nubia Christos from Creating Unity in the Community. Juneteenth is the oldest known commemoration of the ending of slavery in the U.S. territories. As early as 1837 in Illinois, Lincoln had argued to abolish slavery in the District of Columbia, but he was in a dreadfully small minority. Congressman Lincoln in 1849 proposed abolition in D.C., but could not get the vote through Congress. And then a few months later, Lincoln, with Congress's approval, signed the order to abolish slavery in the U.S. territories on June 19th, fulfilling a campaign promise made as early as Lincoln's Peoria speech in October 1854. So General Granger and 2 armed units of colored soldiers enforced the announcement of the reading of the General Order Number 3 that was issued in Galveston, Texas, for all enslaved persons in the Southwest, sparked the first celebration of Juneteenth. Freedom Day was on the 19th day of June, 1865.
Mariam, are you able from Brownsville Heritage or?
Good afternoon, everyone. So glad to see you guys out here for the raising of the Juneteenth national flag. I'm here to speak about Reverend Dr. Ronald Myers, affectionately known as Doc Myers to us all. Dr. Myers he was called many things and carried many titles, but the most prestigious one so far that you're here, sitting here right now today, as the founder and CEO of the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation. It is with him that we are here today raising the Juneteenth flag. He continuously, effortlessly fought to bring in when I first met him, it was 43 states in the District of Columbia to be a part of making Juneteenth a national holiday. His dream finally was realized, June 17th, 2021, when President Biden signed in Senate Bill 475, the 11th federal national holiday as the Juneteenth National Independence Day observance. And here we are today celebrating that. I am so honored. Knowing Dr. Myers myself personally, say, in memory of Dr. Ronald Myers, that we raise this Juneteenth flag here in Wall Street in his honor. Thank you so much for having me.
Remarks. And it is truly a pleasure of mine right now to introduce to you Sylvia Myers, the wife of the late Reverend Dr. Ronald, and as he was affectionately known, Doc Myers, Sr., the co-founder of the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation.
Well, again, hello. My name is Sylvia Holmes Myers, and I am the widow of the late Reverend Dr. Ronald Vincent Myers, Sr. It is an honor and a privilege to stand here in front of you at such an iconic statue. Just as
Arturo worked tirelessly to create the charging bull, my late husband dedicated more than 2 decades to see this day to come to pass. He dedicated more than 2 decades to see Juneteenth become a national holiday. His dream was for Juneteenth to become a day of observance, such as Flag Day. But because of President Biden, he saw the need and he saw fit to sign it as a federal holiday. So let's give a round of applause to President Biden. I know Doc can just look down on us right now and smile because he never thought that a federal holiday would come to pass. But it did. It did, Doc. It did. Made. History is being made today because the flag, the national Juneteenth flag, will fly high alongside of our American flag because the two, June 19th and the 4th of July, completes our day of freedom, America's day of freedom. And again, my name is Sylvia Holmes Myers. I am president of the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation. And everyone, have a wonderful day and happy Juneteenth to all.
Thank you. And so now I have another pleasure to bring to this podium the creator of the Juneteenth flag, Mr. Ben Haight.
Even though I am attributed with the creation of the design for the Juneteenth flag, it was Sylvia's husband, Dr. Myers, who said he wanted to use it to bring about change in this country. And believe me, change has been in progress, but Juneteenth is a spirit. There's a Juneteenth spirit, and it's in its infancy stage. It's only going to grow. And I recall my years living and working here in New York City, and I believe there's a spirit here in New York City, and if it's brought together with Juneteenth, they can change this country. This country needs healing, and it needs it now. And Juneteenth can bring that about.
And we're going to ask Siwa Condrenton to come to the podium. She'll be.
From the beginning, President Lincoln made it clear that the purpose of the Civil War was not to end slavery, but the preservation of the Union. Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation during the 3rd year of a very bloody Civil War and used the strategic decision to crush the Southern military. The decree proclaimed the freedom of slaves in the 10 Confederate states still in rebellion, but not in the 5 slave states that remained loyal to the Union. So no slaves had been set free. As Southern states' battles were won and slaves were set free, soldiers were also captured and murdered while plantation owners ignored the order to set slaves free. The Civil War had ended in April, yet in Texas, by June of 1865, there was still an estimate of over 250,000 enslaved people of color.
We can have now Michelle Sweeney McCombs come up to the podium, who will be speaking on the NJOF's modern Juneteenth history.
In 1994, the era of the modern Juneteenth movement began when a group of Juneteenth leaders from across the country gathered in New Orleans, Louisiana, at Christian Unity Baptist Church, Reverend Dwight Webster, pastor, to work for a greater national recognition of Juneteenth. The historic meeting was convened by Reverend John Mosley, director of the New Orleans Juneteenth Freedom Celebration. Several national Juneteenth organizations were ignited from this historic gathering, including the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation, NJOF. Shortly prior to this gathering, Juneteenth America, Inc. was founded by John Thompson, who organized the first National Juneteenth Convention and Expo, and the National Juneteenth Celebration Foundation, founded by Ben Haith, the creator of the National Juneteenth flag. In 1997, through the leadership of Lula Briggs Galloway, president of the NAJL, and Reverend Ronald V. Myers, senior MD, chairman of the NAJL, the U.S. Congress officially passed historic legislation recognizing Juneteenth as Juneteenth Independence Day in America. Reverend Doc Myers returned to Washington, D.C. in the year 2000 to establish the annual Washington Juneteenth National Holiday Observance and began the campaign to establish Juneteenth Independence Day as a national day of observance as NJOF chairman. Thank you.
Very much, Michelle. And now we're welcoming to the podium Dana Walker Boyd, president of the Staten Island Alliance Corporation.
Yes. So the Juneteenth flag was created by the NJOF, Massachusetts Juneteenth State Director and founder of the Juneteenth Celebration Foundation, NJCF, Ben Haith, in 1997. The flag underwent a revision in the year 2000. The symbols were a deliberate process so that all Americans can recognize American freedom and African American history. The banner with a bursting star in the middle is a symbolic representation of the end of slavery in the United States. The white star in the center of the flag has a dual meaning. It represents Texas, the Lone Star State that goes beyond representing the freedom of African Americans in all 50 states. The bursting outline around the star is inspired by a nova, a term that astronomers use to mean a new star. The arc 24, the curve that extends across the width of the flag, represents a new horizon, the opportunities and promises that lay ahead for African Americans. The red, white, and blue represent the American flag, a reminder that enslaved African Americans and their descendants were and are Americans. The flag was revised in 2007 to include June 19, 1865, commemorating enslaved African Americans in Galveston, Texas, to learn about the Emancipation Proclamation. Haith says, "This country has so many aspects to it that are spiritual. Believe this flag is of that nature." The tradition of raising the Juneteenth flag has grown today as a reminder for all African Americans are still fighting for equality and justice. Haith said those colors symbolize the continuous commitment of people in the United States to do better and to live up to the American ideal of liberty and justice for all. Juneteenth flag-raising ceremonies have taken place not only in June, but in communities across the nation all year round. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Please, everyone, join me in welcoming Commissioner of the Mayor's Office of Equity, Sadia Sherman.
I'm Sadia Sherman. I'm Commissioner of the New York City Mayor's Office of Equity. And it's really wonderful to be here today to celebrate what is a bittersweet holiday, but certainly a holiday that signifies the steps that our country has come to realize democracy. Juneteenth is an acknowledgement of our history, our country's history in its very painful and violent past, but it's also a reminder of our long fight for freedom. Juneteenth, it went from, an intimate family holiday, backyard barbecues, community festivals, to a city and a federal holiday, and now us standing here raising the flag to commemorate Juneteenth. Who could imagine? To say that I'm deeply honored to be here today is an understatement, because I'm not just honored, I'm proud. Us being here today, our very presence is a revelation. Right? I'm proud to be part of an administration that demonstrates daily why diversity matters, right? I'm proud to be the granddaughter of Miss Mary, who came to New York from the rural South and faced discrimination in this city, and now I get to lead an office that's focused on equity and racial justice in that same city. So in a time across our country where there are book bans and there is an ahistorical accounting of contemporary issues, it's critical that we celebrate and we lift up holidays like this, holidays that acknowledge our tragedy and our triumph and keep us honest about the history of this country. And so by gathering here today, we're celebrating the accomplishments as us as a people. As Commissioner Cumbo said, we're standing here being our ancestors' wildest dreams. We're honoring them, we're lifting them up, we're thanking them for this fight towards freedom and for never giving up. And so now it's my honor to introduce a man who exemplifies never giving up, the fight towards freedom, and the fight for New Yorkers every day, the 110th Mayor of New York City, Mayor Adams. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And to Brother Ben, who created the flag that we're going to raise today. Thank you so much, brother. The symbolism that is associated with it and the long road. I think that Commissioner Cumbo, who I'm sure she's the first commissioner in cultural affairs that ever adorned a tie the way that Commissioner Cumbo is doing so, showing that that African diaspora, the spirit and energy. This is a significant moment. The first time this flag is being placed on this pole here at Bowling Green, a place that symbol powers. And it just shows you how much and how we should always remain resilient. Because it was right here where people of color was sold into slavery. It was right here where many of the auctions took place. And just a few distance and yards away, you see the Indian Museum, where many of our Indian brothers and sisters saw their land removed and taken from them. And so this is a historical moment that we raised the flag for the first time here in Bowling Green. But it also is a moment of reflection. Slavery brought a level of draconian and terrible deeds. We saw even some of the famous songwriters describing the tone of strange fruits when you saw a large number of African-American men and women hung from trees. We saw the demonization. We saw the challenges of giving birth in the cotton fields and then going out and having to continue to pick the cotton. We saw the Klansmen riding through, destroying homes. We saw Tulsa, Oklahoma, and how Black Wall Street was destroyed. We've come so far, and we stated that we never surrender to violence again. If that is our real belief, as we focus on Juneteenth, we cannot believe that it's all right to stamp out slavery, but be enslaved to violence in our city and in our country. Look what happened in Chicago, St. Louis, Atlanta, all across the country as we paused on Monday to reflect on our ancestors and what they fought for. They did not fight and die for us to fight and die among each other. In our honesty on this moment, I refuse to submit to the belief that someone with a white hood should not kill us, but it's all right with someone in black skin to kill us. It's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. We have an obligation as we acknowledge Juneteenth, our liberation, our freedom, our fight, our fortitude, our discipline, our resiliency. We have an obligation to make sure that these young boys and girls grow up to understand the contributions that we have made in this country. America is America because of the black and brown people who built this country. As Dr. King would say, we made Cotton King. We built the foundation of this country, and we did not build this foundation to watch it turn to violence across this entire nation. So I thank all of you for coming here, acknowledging the importance of Juneteenth, going from a federal holiday, and I was able to sign it into law as a city holiday. The 110th mayor, it took 110 mayors before we realized that we should raise the flag and raise the rich tradition of our community. Thank you so much. Let's continue to say forward ever, backwards never.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Keep the good work.
work up.
The mayor has agreed to accept an award on behalf of a great African who has never been honored from the colonial period, from the Revolutionary War. Most of you know even better than I that thousands upon thousands of enslaved Africans and even some non-enslaved all refer to themselves as Cato. Cato was the name they used in white society, and for many of them we don't have their original names. One of those individuals who may have been enslaved, but not enslaved, he spied for the American cause. He risked his life for the American cause, carrying information about British troop movements from here in Lower Manhattan to George Washington and Alexander Hamilton in New Jersey. He was in prison, he was tortured, the British were never convinced that he was, and they freed him. In all this time, this Cato has never, ever been honored once. I'm so proud, as modest as it may be, that the Bowling Green Association has the privilege of being the first to honor this great African. New York City hero, Cato, African-American New Yorker and American patriot, spied for the American cause and saved George Washington's life. I hope his spirit is here and the spirit of other thousands. He would never have thought that an African-American mayor would accept an award in his honor. Mr. Mayor.
And so now we are going to go and raise the flags, and we're going to have two singers, Tanette Span and Yodit Stephen Smith, sing the national anthem as we raise the flags. So let's all...
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous flight, oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the glistening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on